right, so ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our session. Thank you for the flexibility for moving to a bigger room. We didn't expect to see that many of you, but it's definitely nice to see that so many people are interested in our today's topic. This is going to be an expert conversation about Argentina with the leading question, how is Argentina doing today under the rule of President Milei and his agenda, which is often labeled as radical or controversial, so we will look into that. Luckily, I won't be looking into the answers alone. I have a special guest here. Welcome, Federico Fernandez, an expert on innovation and regulation and also a CEO of a global network, We Are Innovation, that connects think tanks and NGOs from all around the globe. It's a pleasure to have you here in Prague with us. Welcome. Would you like to elaborate first on what your network is doing, just so we know where you are coming from?
Thank you, Eliska, and thank you everyone for coming. Really, it's in a way, this is for me an opportunity to talk about my country. So I'm very happy that you are interested. And let's say Argentina usually it's in the news, but not for the best reasons. So it's basically football and Milei now. So very, very happy for all of you. I'm very thankful for your presence. I'll try to be very quick. Let's say I'm here wearing two hats. On the one hand, I started many years ago, more than I would like to admit, a foundation in Argentina named Fundación Internacional Bases, that we have been promoting classical liberalism, the Austrian School of Economics for many years, doing conferences, publishing books. Larry Reid was in one of our conferences in the past, for instance, in Rosario, in Argentina. Rosario is the city where Che Guevara was born, so it's a tough place, but we brought him and he survived. And on the other hand, for the last 5 years, and I'm accompanied here by my colleagues Bea, Lasha, and Tanya, I've been part of We Are Innovation. We Are Innovation is a network that promotes innovation, as its name states. We were born originally in Latin America. We are a network, of think tanks, NGOs, and foundations. The network was born originally in Latin America, but then we expanded, and currently we are 50 partners from 4 different continents, and always looking for more partners. So if you're part of an organization and you're interested in organization, let's talk. We'll be here all weekend. We have a booth in the fair as well. So in a nutshell, that's it.
Thank you very much. I will also briefly introduce myself and do a bit of self-promo. I hope you excuse me. I'm representing the European Correspondent, which is a pan-European independent media outlet. We publish daily newsletters about Europe, local context. We have correspondents in every European country, so if that's something you might be interested in, I will be happy if you check that out. But now we are already moving into our segment. My first question to you, Federico, is starting from the very basics, and I would like to know what is the president of Argentina, Javier Milei, like as a person?
Well, he's quite flamboyant, as you probably know, but let me tell you a little bit anecdote, a good one and a real one that I think shows you the kind of commitment and the kind of person that Javier is. In 2017, we organized an event with Fundación Bases in Rosario. Rosario is 300 kilometers from Buenos Aires. It takes more or less 4 hours to get, from Buenos Aires to Rosario. Buenos Aires is the capital. We organized something. I knew Javier, but it's not that we were best friends or anything like that. But he knew that we were going to do something to promote Austrian economics, to promote the ideas of classical liberalism. So he came early in the morning by car. He gave a speech at a lunch that we organized for potential donors of Fundación Bases. Then he gave a big talk that we had to switch places 3 times because we got more and more people enrolled and we needed bigger and bigger audiences. And finally, he gave a talk for a young group of Fundación Bases late in the evening. and the same day he came back. For that, he didn't charge a penny, and he didn't even say, hey, this is too much, just put me to give one talk or anything. On the contrary, he was very happy, and he offered to do it again in a few months. So I think that tells you the kind of person that he is, and the kind of commitment that he has shown to promote our ideas. And I really think that is a good way to understand how he is, in the flesh.
Do you think that his personality was one of the most important driving factors that led to his political success?
Well, definitely, the videos that we see of Javier when he was most, effervescent, if we are from the time that he was not a politician yet. This was 2016, 2017, when he was gaining prominence in media, particularly with the shorts on social media. And those videos come from, shows that he was invited, that it was basically 5 lions against him, and it was either being like that or being eaten alive. And clearly the methodology worked. He has moderated in many ways. Definitely there's an aesthetic part of the phenomenon of Milei, the hair, which I highly envy, of course. The hair, the leather jacket, and many things, the eyes, everything. There is that, of course, that played a part. I think also, and Javier also, he's a brilliant economist and very much influenced by the Austrian School of Economics. That definitely is very important, is part of this mix. I think also, and I always explain this, I'm not taking any merits from Javier. I think also he was the right person, definitely, but at the right time as well. And that is the second part to understand the Milei phenomenon.
That's exactly my another question. So what was the situation in the country like in the time that Milei became president? What was the social economic situation and also the political atmosphere in the country? We could be speaking until Sunday evening about this, so I'll try to be very, very short and summarize. Argentina for several decades has been culturally dominated by, to put it bluntly, leftism and statism. The state had all the answers, private sector needed to be suffocated for whatever reason all the time, and the state was always right. Taxes were good, private initiative was bad, etc., etc. That was the climate, and that climate also because of how populism operates. Populism is like, like this. There was this movie of a stain that continued to grow and ate everything. Populism is a little bit like that. When a party becomes populist, all the others, due to the nature of political competition, have to become populists. And there was no real change. It was just, switching about vanilla and, milder vanilla. That was how it was. So those ideas brought decadence to Argentina. Just to give you an idea, 1 every 2 children in Argentina are poor, which is a social catastrophe that really apocalyptic. Argentina, from being, let's say, 30 years ago, one of the first countries in Latin America, top maybe 30 in the world. Now it's, I don't even know where it is. The decline was absolute. And particularly, I think this defines Milei. He was, from the very beginning, he clearly tried to establish himself as the anti-system, but not anti-system in the sense I want to break the constitution or anything like that. I think it's exactly the opposite. He wants the constitution to rule, which wasn't ruling in Argentina. He wants the rule of law. But he was establishing himself as I am exactly the opposite of all this. And one of the catchiest phrases that he used during his campaign was, in Argentina, the only one who
better themselves are politicians, which was, by the way, absolutely true. And people who were losing their children to immigration, or losing their children to drugs, or losing their children to poverty, or being themselves poor, or seeing that my grandfather was poor, my father was very poor, and I'm completely destitute. Those people, that message, we cannot claim that we're very intelligent because it took like 7 decades, but at least at one point there was that click. And that is the part. That's what allowed Milei to run the campaign that he ran. He ran a campaign telling the truth. It was a very colorful campaign, but he was, one of the talking points, I said this last year here in the LibertyCon, one of the talking points of Milei during the campaign was, we need to do a labor reform to make firing easier. That was, which Argentina absolutely needed that. In Argentina, it's better to marry someone than to employ. It was better to marry someone than employing them because it's easier to get a divorce than to fire somebody. So the situation was insane. But, it's difficult, let's say, all over the world to win an election saying, I promise blood, sweat, and tears. I promise that things are going to get way worse before they get better. And we need to make firing easier. So that is the part that, the message was there, and there was, let's say, the fertile ground to, receive that message.
Well, it is true that Milei was very transparent about his intentions, about the cuts that he was planning to do, and he really started implementing these policies as early as possible after he took the office. He reduced significantly funds for many public institutions, among other things, and that also included educational institutions, some of them. I read about some student protests that followed these decisions and so on. It drew quite a lot of attention, also international. So from your point of view, were all of these measures really necessary, and did they really bring what they were supposed to bring?
When Milei got into office, it was December 2023. In December 2023, just that month, I'm not saying the whole year or the whole decade, inflation was 25% in 1 month. So Argentina was, I think it was in hyperinflation territory, which already we had in the past. The presidential candidate of the Peronists spent, it's difficult to know, but spent approximately 7 points of the national GDP in his own campaign, giving handouts, and that was some even were saying that was a good thing. And poverty was already in atrocious levels. So Argentina, the metaphor of the chainsaw, which is again something very visual, it was not I am, let's say, Jason. It was we need major surgery. That was, I need to come and cut many things, and it's going to be painful because the country is dying. That was the situation. Argentina was about to go into hyperinflation, about to fall into default again. Poverty was already extremely high and was going to skyrocket, but like up to 90% levels or something like that. So Argentina needed, like Poland, we had Leszek Balcerowicz here. I should stand when I mention that name, who is known for the so-called shock therapy. It's not something that he coined, but doesn't matter. Argentina needed that. Argentina needed shock therapy. Argentina couldn't say, okay, we'll touch a few variables and maybe. No, Argentina needed something like that. And Argentina, what Argentina has done in the last 12 months or so is amazing. Public spending was cut by 28% in 1 year, just in 2024. Inflation went from being 25% a month to being 2%. And you know how inflation, you can even, let's say, inflation it's a difficult animal to tame. I think they couldn't have been more austere and fiscally responsible, but inflation takes time to, it's not that today you have Balcerowicz and tomorrow inflation disappears. Unfortunately, it's not, but the trend is fantastic. And poverty went up the first 6 months. And this was, I think, a media disfiguration. This is like, you have a patient, somebody who had a horrible accident, and they take them to the hospital, and they put them, for instance, an artificial respirator, and they put them all these tubes, and somebody comes and says, hey, the guy before coming to the hospital was breathing without the respirator. No, I mean, it's not. No, he was about to die, and what we're doing is saving him. Of course, you look at him like now he looks horrible. It's in a stretcher, with all apparatus keeping him alive, and that's what happened the first 6 months. And now, but even just it took 6 months, and you saw, and we started seeing how inflation started plummeting even earlier, and poverty has declined a lot. And the last number that we saw is that between the peak that was at the half 2024 of 52% approximately, it went down to 38%. These are millions of people, and extreme poverty, let's say percentage-wise, was declined even in a sharper manner. So what he has done is working, definitely. It's what Argentina needed, and it's what people voted, because he's doing exactly what he said he was going to do. This is why when people say, but Milei still has more than 50% of endorsement in every poll. Yes, because, he didn't lie. He didn't say, we're going to have milk and honey in 2 months because of my hair, the power of my hair. No. He's not the power of my hair, for sure not. But he said what he was going to do, and people voted for that. And so yes, I think it's definitely what we needed.
Is that also the reason why the public support of Milei is remaining quite high, despite all these cuts and despite the fact that the poverty increased in the first months after he started as a president? So is the transparency the key to maintaining the public support in this case? Yes,
it is a part, because I think, and this is what makes me the most optimistic. I think Javier has a lot of fantastic qualities, and definitely he was the right person now. But I think also he's let's say, I was talking to a friend earlier during lunch, and he's, at the same time, he's a factor of what we are, a catalyzer of what we are living, but he's also an emergent of something that is deeper and let's say is more profound and is bigger than him. Because his message would have never, caught fertile soil if there wasn't that soil. And as I said, Milei's campaign was suicidal. He was really saying, hey, vote for me, it's going to be very painful. Vote for me, we're going to go through very tough times. Vote for me, and I'm going to cut everything. It's chainsaw coming. And people voted for that. The vote for Milei is the most reasoned out vote that there was in the last election, and that's why the support is there. Because, and now thanks to social media, people knew what they were getting. People really knew, and it was not, and again, this remains to be seen. Sometimes I seen out of being too optimistic, so please take everything I say with a grain of salt. There were two ways to understand why Milei won. One was, hey, this is a vote to the Joker, a guy who wants to, burn things, He wants to burn everything to the ground, and who's the best guy to do that? Milei. Probably he was not the best guy. The extreme left has been offering that for decades now. And we know they deliver about that. If you want to destroy a society, just put them in power, and you'll get that. That can be an explanation of the Milei vote. Okay, yeah, people were fed up with good reason, and they just voted somebody. Hey, here is the gasoline, here is the lighter. Please burn everything. The other thing is people realized that we had the state present in our lives for 70 years. We have lived in a world of social justice for 70 years, and 1 every 2 children is poor. And people really understood that was not the way. And Milei's message first got into the young people, and those young people convinced their parents and their grandparents. And people who voted for Milei knew what they were getting. I think this is the more likely explanation.
Could you explain in greater detail some of other flagship policies that he introduced, except from the cutting funds of the public institutions, something that contributed significantly to the success with tackling inflation?
Well, there are many. It's been, let's say, a very multifaceted approach, what Milei has done, and again, we could be talking for a long time. I mean, the public spending cuts should not be underestimated, because in 1 year, really, public spending on the national level has lowered by almost 30%. That's really a lot. I mean, that's a good first step, but that's very good. Another very positive thing is that our central bank, I mean, Argentina was, we had 25% inflation in 1 month, in part because the central bank, Argentina had already closed, could not access the markets for debt because it was Argentina, and the central bank had become the barman of an alcoholic, of a fiscal alcoholic, that was the state, that was the government. So every time the government needed money to run whatever program, the central bank was printing, the printing presses was, that was a booming business, definitely. And that was going to take us to hyperinflation. So the monetary management and very serious policies that were applied to cut that from the very beginning, to say, hey, this stops now. This stops now. The central bank is no longer the dealer of the fiscal drug addict that the government is. That was also key. And let's say, just to mention another one, I could mention several more. The process of deregulation that Argentina is going through, I think it's something that hopefully will be studied in the future and could become a blueprint from many other countries. Because, and this is done, I mean, not only by him, please, but there's a gentleman named Federico Fernandez, and he's in charge of the deregulation efforts of the government. And he's doing an amazing job. The first, one of the first, I mean, this is something also that, and we have to remember this, please, because we have to be more optimistic. Milei has a secret weapon, so to speak, that is classical liberal policies work. We should never, because, for instance, in the morning, please, everything was great, and at one point, everybody was mentioning all the failures of socialism. Yeah, socialism fails because of, it's true. The other side of that coin is that our policies work. Really, I'm not surprised that this thing is working, because let's say there was, of course, a political component that, okay, he could have been, let's say, taken out of office, killed, or whatever. But if he could apply what he wanted to do, it was going to work. Because it has worked in Poland, in the Czech Republic, in the US, when they want to do it, whatever, in Vietnam now, whatever. I think Ben Powell, an economist, he had a saying like, show me a country that is economically free and it's either rich or growing fast. Show me a country that is not economically free and it's either poor or stagnant. And really, that is absolutely the case. So what Milei is doing worked, because they always work. But sorry, going back to deregulation, what they are doing in deregulation is amazing. The first effect, and this was very simple, and again, for everybody who is here was very obvious, Argentina had a real estate market, particularly regarding rents, that was similar to North Korea. Of course, nobody was renting their property, rents were sky high, and it was a mess. They liberated that. What happened? Rents went down, and there are more apartments to be rented. So, magic? No, the free market. And well, deregulation really is operating very well.
Thank you. Before we dive into another segment, I would like to open the floor for questions from the audience. If there are any, please don't be shy and raise your hand. Okay, there's one.
Hello, Radovan Jurana. My question is that many reformers who made it to acquire power, they struggle with lack of human capital, with people who would follow the reforms and implement the reforms. So how come that after 50 years of leftist rule, Milei was able to find enough people to transform the country?
It's a very good question. I mean, Milei has been in politics for 3 years. He ran for a member of parliament 3 years ago, that he did very well. He got 20% of the vote, and then he ran for president a year and a few months ago and won. He's from a new party. Argentina has, let's say, it's a good system in the sense that preserves checks and balances, but we have two chambers, the parliament and the Senate. They are renewed, in percentages, which I think it's a very good system. It means that if a horrible candidate gets a lot of votes, he doesn't get, or he or she, they don't get all the power in the parliament at once. You need to win several elections. But this meant that he has we have, I don't remember the numbers now, but we have something like 250 members of parliament, and Milei's party has like 17. I mean, it's really, and in the Senate, the proportions are even worse. There is, of course, a huge popular support, and this plays a factor. But I think, and again, I could be wrong with this, I think reformers in Argentina failed, and I think in most of the countries of the world, they failed because of lack of will. Mostly lack of will. If I may say, lack of balls. I think that's if you want to reform a country, you need to have a lot of courage, to be politically correct. And after, the other things, you need to align as well. And we have I was talking with a friend last night. She reminded me that I was also optimistic about the previous administration in Argentina, who was politically way more powerful than Milei's government right now. And they failed, and in part they failed because they had bad ideas, but also they didn't have the will to do the good ideas. And so if we want to reform our countries, the first thing is to have somebody that is really committed to doing it. And then, in general, things align.
You mentioned around 50% support so far. My question is, how do you view the long-term continuity of those reforms? Do you think that in 20 years we'll be looking at Milei as a fluke that passed away and Argentina returned to the old ways? Or do you think this is the start of a new beginning that will be continued and there will be more people who would have public support to pick up the torch and do the reforms until the very end? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. That's the $1 trillion question. I am optimistic, and I've been saying more or less why. I think young people support these ideas. I think these ideas have, thanks to technology, thanks to social media, they have disseminated in a way that it was impossible 10, 15 years ago. It's amazing the transformation that we've seen. I remember when we started my foundation in Argentina 20 years ago, it was a different world. It was a completely different world. And I think because of our huge failure, the situation can be comparable to some of the countries in Central Europe. It's unlikely that communism will come back here, through democratic ways, because people still remember, and I think they will remember for a very long time, what that was. We didn't have communism. We have something almost as bad, and for many decades, and I think that, that scar will last for a long time. So hopefully, but of course I could be wrong. In 20 years we can be at the LibertyCon, in I don't know where, in Moscow maybe, if times are better, and we'll discuss. I don't know now.
Federico, there's one campaign promise that Milei did not deliver on, and that was the promise to officially dollarize and shut down the central bank. So what's happening there? Is that still possible, or is that dead?
I don't think, please, this is me speaking. This is not, let's say, I don't have insider information or anything like that. So, you know, I'm just saying this because I could be completely wrong. I don't think the idea is dead. I think they haven't found the right timing yet, and I think it's something that it's still there. Milei spoke of two things: dollarization and, let's say, abolishing legal tender. And I think both things. If you ask me what I was thinking previous of the conversation with Eliska, certain things that are still missing, a tax reform is one of them. More emphasis on free trade, we can also talk about that. And the third one is dollarization and abolishing legal tender. I think they are setting the pieces in place to do so. I think they were, the monetary situation of Argentina, I mean, probably you understand it way better than I could, was really dramatic. And they were very much afraid that runs and many things could happen. And they tried to take first the stabilizing road. Now they are strengthening the reserves of the central bank, and I think dollarization is still part of the menu. But it's true, it has not been delivered yet. But I would emphasize yet.
I wanted to ask, please, about the privatization efforts. How is it going? Thank you.
It's going quite well. They have closed a lot of entities, which I think it's very good. Argentina was a highly controlled economy, highly interventionism at its best. It's not that we have that many public companies. There were and there still are a lot of semi-monopolies that are private, but that have a lot of privileges. There were unfortunately many companies that were taken by oligarchs related to the prior administration. That it's difficult to get rid of that. I mean, let's say following the letter of the law, it's difficult. But they have closed. They have put for sale many companies, but there were not that many. And also another thing that they have done, and they are changing completely the system, is how public works are financed. They basically froze everything last year. That was the mothership of corruption, by the way. And they are changing the system to give, because let's say you need to build roads, Argentina needs a lot of infrastructure, but they are going to go through a model that prioritizes private initiative and makes the state not to put any money or very little money. And so in that regard, we're going in the right direction.
Thank you for your questions. I will follow up freely on the question about the central bank, because in Argentina there was now introduced a new exchange rate system. And I'm wondering, how does this influence the international trade and the position of international investors in Argentina?
Argentina had a system in which we had like 25 different exchange rates with the dollar. Most of them were not official, and of course they were the real ones. It was an absolute mess. It was really an absolute mess. Dismounting this was very difficult. The prior non-Peronist administration suffered because of dismantling this, maybe not at the right time, and then they had like a bleeding of reserves that eventually, before they left office, they had to put the controls again. Clearly, Milei is trying to avoid that fate. And I see this as efforts of normalizing the country. Things that, for most of you, Certainly people in the Czech Republic are obvious, and let's say you have not suffered since the fall of communism, but they were in Argentina present until a few weeks ago. This is, in part, this comes with I was mentioning the central bank being the dealer of a fiscal junkie that was the government. The central bank was full of letters of the government, IOUs, that the government was not, it was full, the government didn't have the money, so either that debt was going to go to default or erase or whatever. What they have done with the International Monetary Fund now is basically it's a 20 billion program, but 13 billion are basically rollover of payments, just kicking them a little bit further. And the remaining money went to solidify the reserves of the central bank. It's interesting that the goals that the IMF had for Argentina, Milei completely superseded them all. And in the first meeting, when they sat down, he said, "Don't worry, because I'm way more radical than what you want," and he delivered that as well. So this is, again, going into the direction of normalizing the country, stabilizing the country, and making Argentina look like a normal country. It would have been, of course, in the ideal world, this should have been done the first day of Milei taking office. We have Larry Reid here, so we can have a conversation with him later, but that would have been dangerous. And we have to remember that Milei still has a brutal opposition, because the Peronist party is the mafia part. It's a mafia. It's not. Don't think of it as a normal political party. It's a mafia. It's a party that only wants to get into power, no matter how and no matter what they have to do to get there. And they of course they are waiting for whatever misstep to try to create a scenario in which Milei is either deposed or has to resign. So I like to judge the Milei administration in the following way. It's a new government run by a person who has been in politics 3 years. In the day-to-day things, affairs, they are going to make mistakes. They make mistakes from time to time. Those, for me, are very easy to forgive because for everything I just explained. The timing, I also like to give them the benefit of the doubt, because I am here sitting very comfortable. It's easy. Sitting on my couch, I play football better than Messi. But if you put me in the pitch, I run 2 meters and probably have a heart attack. So it's again the timing. I defer to them in the sense, hey, maybe they know things that I don't know. What I am relentless, and so far they have not betrayed my trust, so to speak, is in the course that they have set and where they want to go. And in that regard, I think the course is perfect and where they want to go is perfect, and none of the principles and the ideas that I defend have been let's say, altered or changed or forgotten. So I think that's the best way to judge what Milei is trying to do and how he's going to do it. From time to time, I hope, knock on wood, this doesn't happen, but they are going to, please, again, excuse me, last time, there will be fuck-ups. There have been fuck-ups, there will be fuck-ups. Please, remember, it's a guy who's been in politics for 3 years. 3 years, not, 30, like, the average politician, that never worked in the private sector and has been in politics forever. So there will be mistakes, there will be things, but the important thing is where he's going. If, there's a mistake here and there, I think we can be a little bit forgiving.
Speaking of mistakes or things that didn't go exactly to the plan, quite recently, also at the beginning of the session, you mentioned that Argentina is often in the global media, not in a very positive light. And one thing that made the headlines, the global headlines, quite recently was the cryptocurrency scandal that happened in Argentina. Could you shed some light on that? What really happened and what are the consequences? Has it influenced public trust in the president in any way?
To the second part, no. It didn't influence public trust at all. And it was, let's say, it was a storm in a teacup. It was a mistake. Why this happened, I don't know. I think it's because Javier is a good guy, and sometimes he could be taken advantage of. But let's see what this happened. He owned it, and he said, "I messed up. It won't happen again." All this happened in 2 hours, by the way. But, he didn't say, "Oh, no, this is a conspiracy. I didn't tweet. I was hacked. It was, Russian bots from wherever." No, it was, "Hey, I made a mistake. My bad. Sorry." So, again, I think that's the best way to proceed when you make a mistake.
We're slowly coming to the end of the session. So, one last chance if there's any question from the audience.
So Argentina has had, yes, due to nationalizing of industries and heavy-handed regulation and defaults on their debt, Argentina has a lot of foreign investors who don't want to invest in them, right? And now Milei is making the country a lot more attractive to investors. Has that actually translated into foreign investment? Or if it hasn't, what's still missing for that to happen? And are there interesting investment opportunities in Argentina?
Thank you for the question. That's an amazing question. Let's see, several things. By the way, they have created a special regime for big investments that gives them more stability and more security in many ways, and this has translated into investments, for instance, in the lithium sector, in renewable energy sectors. Petronas just a few months ago announced a huge investment to build a liquefied natural gas terminal in the province of Buenos Aires. So regarding particularly to commodities and natural resources, yes, they're already, but as you said, and this is, you put, let's say, the finger, in the wound. Argentina has a horrible track record, and that's a reality. And Argentina has cheated and has betrayed the confidence of our governments, in many occasions. This is an issue that and now this is, how we would solve the problem, and by we, I mean we are innovation. We are working a lot on a project for Argentina to adopt the flat tax, a similar, basically copied from Estonia. We really admire what Estonia has done. And Argentina needs to, let's say, give a punch on the table. We really need to show that, hey, our bad ways are changing, and we have to become attractive. Because the other thing is, it's my country, I love it, we have very good, let's say, beef, we have very good football players, but we are a poor country, we have a lot of problems, and we are a very isolated country as well. It's not that Argentina, geographically and in many ways, it's not that people are thinking of Argentina like all the time and, I'm desperate to sign a check to go to Argentina. So we need to become more attractive. And one way would be to have a 13% flat tax. In all the other ways, identical as Estonia. If you keep the money in your company and it's reinvested, it's not taxed. It's only taxed when you realize a gain, which is also, by the way, the fairest way to tax people. I mean, if there's such a thing. And that would be. The other thing would be dollarization. Because that would be a way to, let's say, hopefully kill two of the dragons that historically have burnt a lot of people of Argentina, which is taxes and which is, monetary mismanagement, which leads to the inflation, controls, etc., etc.
With that, we ran out of time, unfortunately. Thank you very much for all the questions and for your attention and interest in this topic. And I wish you a good rest of the event. Enjoy all the sessions to come.